Helljumpers, Chapter 23, Part 2. Fuck, Max simply stated as he pushed the Sergeant Major out of the way, which put him in immediate danger, as the monitor fired a beam of red energy that hit Mac in the chest. It made him go down with a scream.
Unacceptable! Unacceptable! Absolutely unacceptable!
They ranted as it turned to fire a blast at the Chief and Arbiter.
Protocol dictates action. I see now that helping you was wrong.
It fired another shot at Twilight and Johnson, who both had to jump out of the way of the beam before the monitor turned back to the Chief.
You are the child of my makers, inheritor of all they left behind. You are Forerunner, but this ring is mine.
The moment Twilight could get a shot, she immediately fired her sniper rifle at the monitor, but the round seemed to just bounce off of the shell of the robot. The other undesired effect it had was that Guilty Spark took notice of her. "Hey, beautiful, smile!" Johnson said as he fired the Spartan laser at Guilty Spark.
You cracked my casing!
It shouted angrily, as everyone opened fire on the monitor, the Chief charging forward, firing an assault rifle at the rogue AI. "Chief, catch!" Johnson shouted as he threw the Spartan laser at the Spartan, who immediately shouldered the laser and fired another shot, but it went wide, as Guilty Spark dodged out of the way of the beam of light.
Stop now before one of us gets hurt!
Guilty Spark roared as he charged another shot aimed at Twilight, Scootaloo flying from the sides and knocked the Alicorn out of the way of the beam.
Tell that to Mac, you piece of scrap!
Scootaloo roared, drawing the monitor's attention for long enough that the Chief could score another hit with a laser. Guilty Spark made a couple of strange digital sounds as he tried to say something.
Destroy your inheritance!
Inheritance my ass! Johnson shouted as he threw a plasma grenade at the monitor, Guilty Spark turning around at unnatural speed and charging its energy beam.
Accept your legacy!
Scootaloo saw this happening and flew at her top speed towards the Sergeant Major in an attempt to push him out of the way for a second time, but was too slow, as Johnson went down in a similar way to Mac.
Sergeant!
Scootaloo shouted as she landed next to the soldier, Guilty Spark getting hit by a laser a third time.
My precious...
It stammered as it leaked plasma and fired another blast at the Chief, who just took it and charged the laser once again.
I am the monitor of Installation 04.
Guilty Spark proclaims as the Chief fired another shot at the monitor, who started screaming as plasma came from the casing and it exploded moments later. Twilight rushed over to Mac, where Lucy was already sitting on her knees with her medkit shaking her head. Scootaloo similarly crouched down next to Johnson, the Chief also running up to them. "I'm getting you out of here," the Spartan simply stated as Johnson coughed up blood. No, you're not, he weakly said as he took hold of the Chief's hand. Don't let her go. Don't ever let her go. Send me out with a bang, he finished, as his life signs flatlined. His hand dropped away from the Chief's, leaving behind Cortana's data chip. Scootaloo looked over at Twilight and Lucy, who were both shaking their heads as they sat next to Mac's body. The Spartan silently walked up to the control panel and put the chip into it.
Chief, I'm so sorry,
Cortana said, as she looked at the two fallen soldiers. She made a motion with her hand, and the Chief pulled her out of the system and put her back into his helmet. A massive beam of energy suddenly shot up in the middle of the room, the magic field spiking as it had done with the other Halo. The room also began to shudder as the uncompleted structure started coming apart. Twilight's horn lit up as she started making use of the magic that was bleeding off of the energy beam. A flash later, everyone was standing in the hallway outside of the control room, as large pylons crashed into the walkway behind them.
That was harder than I expected.
Twilight said as she was breathing heavily, as teleporting a 1,000-pound Spartan took a lot of energy out of her. "I am sorry, Spartan, little demons. But come," the Arbiter said as he started running back out of the structure, cutting down flood forms as they ran. "Even in death, your sergeant guides us home," the Arbiter commented, as a piece of ice gave them a road back up to the ridge behind where Lucy had parked the Warthog.
The Dawn! Of course, the frigate! We still have a chance!
Cortana practically shouted. Twilight unfurled her wings and flew ahead with Scootaloo.
Follow us, we know where Hog is!
The Alicorn shouted as they started fighting through flood forms that were infesting the building that they had run through.
There! The Warthog!
Cortana pointed out as they left the building. Lucy jumped behind the wheel and started the engine. The Chief jumped on the turret and the two ponies jumped on the back in between the driver's seat and the turret.
Come on, Helljumper! Go, go, go!
Cortana shouted as everyone got on board. Lucy immediately went full ahead towards the frigate. Flood and Sentinel forces were clashing along the way as the ring was shuddering apart.
Come on, faster!
Cortana shouted as a ground panel beside the Warthog blew up and flew into the air, and forced the ODSTs to make a sharp turn as to not get hit by it as it fell back down.
It's not as easy as it looks!
Lucy replied to the AI, as she roadkilled a couple of flood infection forms.
Charging sequence at 30%!
Cortana reported, a wave of magic being released from the halo, causing the two ponies to cringe as it hit them.
Not this again!
Scootaloo groaned as she held tightly onto the warthog as did not accidentally get thrown off.
50%, Corporal!
Cortana shouted at Lucy, as an entire section of the float blew up and dropped away in the distance, and she could see the floating frigate. Another wave of magic hit the ponies, but Twilight quickly put up a shield as an attempt to dampen the effects.
80% charged!
Cortana shouted while Lucy was making a beeline straight to the cargo hold.
90% firing sequence initiated!
Cortana finally reported as Lucy floored the accelerator even further, and the warthog made a jump into the cargo hold. Everyone was thrown from the hog onto the floor as it landed. The starship lurched and various vehicles started to slide away from where they stood. Scootaloo and the Arbiter sprinted into a hallway shortly followed by Lucy and Twilight as the Alicorn performed another short-range teleport. The Chief, on the other hand, had to dodge out of the way of the warthog as it slid back out of the hangar bay.
The demon will be fine! We have to get to the bridge!
The Arbiter said as the group was cut off from the hangar by a scorpion tank and cargo boxes. Twilight cursed for a moment but ran off after the Arbiter towards the frigate's bridge. The hallways felt like they went on forever, but eventually they burst into the empty room.
We need to get this moving!
She said as she powered up a console and looked at Scootaloo.
What do you want me to do?
Scootaloo shouted incredulously at the Alicorn.
I'm not rated to fly starships! Well, you know how to fly stuff, unlike me!
Twilight shouted back, the filly letting out a frustrated roar and sat behind a console.
Fuck! There!
She shouted as the frigate lurched forward, another wave of magic flying forward from the ring and hit the two ponies. Lucy ran up to them as they screamed from the magic overload.
Come on, you two, fight it!
She said as the wave passed and gave the two ponies some reprieve.
It's turning into dark magic, Lucy.
Twilight panted as black goo oozed from her horn.
Please tell me you have one of those rings I made. It works two ways. It can also keep magic from the outside out.
Lucy quickly dug through one of her pockets and revealed one of the black rings and slid it over Twilight's horn.
What about me?
Scootaloo asked as she got up from the ground.
The Hegestein Earth ponies can get rid of dark magic much easier, as their casting mechanism isn't directly connected to your brain. And due to me having used dark magic before, I'm more susceptible to it.
Twilight explained to the filly, which seemed to put her at ease for a bit. Scootaloo looked at the monitor again, as the Arbiter increased the power on the thrusters even further.
We're almost there!
She shouted as she saw the portal coming up on the main screen. Twilight suddenly felt her hair stand on end as she felt a powerful source of dark magic behind her.
It's firing!
She shouted in a panic, almost immediately after which she felt the transition from real space into slip space occurring. A loud screech rang through the ship as it sounded as if the frigate was being torn in half, the power suddenly going out, plunging the group into darkness as all sounds stopped as well.
We didn't die.
Scootaloo said, baffled, breaking the silence as she activated the flashlights on her helmet.
We didn't die!
She shouted again and fell into hysteric laughter. The ship suddenly lurched as Twilight felt it exiting slip space and hitting an atmosphere. Everyone was thrown around as the starship came to a sudden halt.
Did we arrive already?
Lucy asked, baffled, as the trip had been nearly instantaneous.
The power input to that portal must have been immense. It probably was.
Twilight groaned as she stood up on her hooves.
Everyone still in one piece? I'm good.
Scootaloo replied, shortly followed by confirmation from the Arbiter. Twilight nodded and opened a comm channel.
Mayday! This is Sergeant Sparkle of the UNSC forward on Adon. Does anyone copy?
Static followed for a moment, but after a couple of seconds, a message came through.
Copy, Sparkle, we're imminent. Stay put.
Twilight slumped against the console and pulled off her helmet. Scootaloo sitting down next to her.
It's over. It's actually over.
Twilight whispered as tears rolled down her face. Scootaloo was sitting in the hold of a pelican as they flew away from the crashed wreck. They had made it, but as they left the spaceship, they found that the entire aft section of the forward onto Dawn sheared off somewhere in slipspace, along with the Chief and Cortana. The war had claimed its first casualties, just as they had won. The cargo bay door closed as the Pelican flew towards the mainland, which was relatively close by. A couple of minutes later, Scootaloo felt the familiar feeling of the Pelican landing on the ground, the engines coming to a gradual stop as the ramp lowered. This revealed Lord Hood, standing at the bottom with his dress suit. The three ODSTs brought a quick but sloppy salute as exhaustion had finally hit them from the constant fighting for nearly a day.
Glad to see you're still in one piece, Helljumpers. Sergeant Sparkle, I want you to report to my office for debriefing in an hour. Go take a shower first. A new dress suit should be waiting for you three as well.
Yes, sir!
Twilight said as she saluted again, the Admiral turning around and walking off. A Marine stepped forward and led them towards a barrack where a shower was present. Scootaloo ripped off the armor pieces and unzipped the undersuit, which stank like nothing else before she stepped into the shower. Old blood and bits of gunk washed off her coat as the filly closed her eyes and just let the warm water hit her.
Scootaloo?
Lucy asked from across the showering room where she was washing up.
Yeah? What's the matter?
The Pegasus asked as she saw both Twilight and Lucy staring at her.
You know, I think I know when it happens.
Twilight said to Lucy without taking her eyes off of Scootaloo.
Girls? Seriously, what's wrong? Your butt mark.
Lucy bluntly stated. Scootaloo's eyes went wide as she looked at her flank.
Cutie mark?
She said, baffled at the mark on her flank.
I have a cutie mark!
She shouted as she hopped through the shower room, fatigue momentarily forgotten. She hopped around for a couple of more seconds before coming to a standstill.
So, what do you think it means?
She asked Twilight, who just shrugged.
That's up to you on how you want to interpret it.
The Alicorn answered, as she turned off her shower and got a towel to dry herself off. Scootaloo raised an eyebrow at Twilight's answer, who sighed in turn.
Look, Scootaloo, think of Dash's cutie mark. What about it tells you that she's the fastest Pegasus on Equus?
Twilight asked the filly, who thought for a moment.
I don't know.
She admitted.
Exactly! It doesn't show fastest Pegasus, but it is exactly that because Dash decided that's what it meant.
Twilight explained to the Pegasus as she put on her new black dress suit and fixed a similarly colored beret with an ODST emblem on her head.
I'm gonna head for the Admiral. I heard that they were gonna have a ceremony later today, so I'll see you girls over there. See you!
Scootaloo replied as she jumped back under the shower, not taking her eyes off of her flanks to the amusement of the other two soldiers. Scootaloo was standing alongside Lucy and Twilight at a hillside, overlooking the portal site at Voy. It was the site where over a month ago the Forward Unadon and the Sangheli fleet had left for the Ark. The shadow of intent was floating in the air behind a monument where Lord Hood stood. He took off his hat as he was about to give a speech.
For us, the storm has passed. The war's over. But let us never forget those who journeyed into the howling dark and did not return. For their decision required courage beyond measure.
Scootaloo teared up. She could see Twilight and Lucy doing the same as memories of their friends who hadn't made it came to her mind.
Sacrifice, and unshakable conviction that their fight, our fight, was elsewhere.
Scootaloo looked at the memorial where countless pictures of fallen soldiers were present. Some she had never seen and some awfully familiar to the Pegasus. She herself had added a scratched 117 to the memorial with her combat knife, as she had figured out that the chief had been designated as MIA instead of KIA, even though he was almost certainly gone.
As we start to rebuild, this hillside will remain barren, a memorial to heroes fallen. They ennobled all of us, and they shall not be forgotten.
The Admiral finished as he put his hat back on. Prison! Arms! A sergeant who Scootaloo had seen several times along with the chief ordered, as 7 Marines took aim at the sky and fired a 3-volley salute. Lord Hood walked down from the memorial towards the Arbiter, and stopped in front of the elite.
I remember how this war started, what your kind did to mine. I can't forgive you, but
He held out his hand.
you have my thanks for standing by him to the end.
The Arbiter took the Admiral's hand and shook it before Lord Hood turned to Twilight.
I take it that you still want to leave as soon as possible, Sergeant?
Twilight nodded.
Yes, sir. Very much so.
She answered.
Then I guess I'll have to do this now.
His stance changing.
Private Savage, Private Woods, come forward,
He said, Scootaloo's ears perking up. Woods came forward, pushing along a wheelchair that held Tyler, who had his trademark smile plastered onto his face.
Corporal Hurricane, Corporal Turner, Sergeant Sparkle. As per the decision of High Command, all UNSC personnel that ventured to the Ark are to be commended with a gold star. But due to your actions aboard the Halo and staying to the very end, you have been nominated for a higher commendation.
Lord Hood started, as he was given the first of 2 boxes by Tyler.
Corporal Turner, due to your actions aboard Halo and seeing the venture through to the end, I may present to you the Medal of Honor,
He said, as he pinned the medal to the corporal's chest before he turned to Tyler, and grabbed the next box and crouched down in front of the 2 ponies.
Sergeant Sparkle, Corporal Hurricane, as the first alien members of the UNSC, I'm honored to be allowed to present you both with a Medal of Honor as well. When you first came into contact with UNSC forces, you could have decided to sit out the conflict, but you decided to take up arms instead, even though High Command doubted the decision at the time. The UNSC and humanity are proud to have called you our allies, and hope that any further cooperation will happen between our 2 kinds.
He finished as he stood back up and saluted the 3 baffled soldiers who gladly returned the gesture.
Princess Twilight Sparkle, a pelican with supplies has been packed and a long-range communications satellite has been loaded onto the Shadow of Intent. As per the Treaty of Cooperation that you signed, the UNSC will guarantee the safety and well-being of Equus, while at the same time, your kind will eventually step up to help humanity as it struggles to rebuild.
The Admiral said to Twilight, surprising Scutalo at the change of title.
Of course, Admiral. As soon as the Unified Earth Government and my Equestrian government ratify the treaty, we'll start mutual cooperation.
Twilight answered. Lord Hood nodded and left the group alone.
So when were you going to tell me about that?
Scutalo asked the Alicorn.
We negotiated the initial terms a couple of hours ago, and after it's enacted, the real negotiations will start.
Twilight answered before she turned to Tyler and Woods.
I didn't expect to see the two of you here.
She said with a smile, and Tyler let out a laugh.
Well, we didn't either, but one doesn't say no to Lord Hood when he personally calls you to ask you to help with the ceremony. No, you don't.
Lucy said with a smile, and hugged the former ODST that was stuck in a wheelchair.
I'm glad that you're awake, Savage.
Yeah, no shit! I'm just annoyed that I'm stuck in this damn chair, he answered.
Anyway, issues aside, you two are going home?
He asked, as he looked at Twilight and Scootaloo.
Yeah, I took care of that. The Arbiter offered to take us home aboard the Shadow of Intent, so that'll speed the journey considerably.
Twilight answered, as the Arbiter came walking up to the group from behind the Alicorn. Yes, and we will have to leave soon, as the humans have requested for us to leave the system as soon as possible, he told the two ponies. Tyler and Woods looked up at the elite in awe, as they hadn't worked with him.
Then, I guess this is it.
Scootaloo said as she looked at the three humans.
I'm really gonna miss you all.
Hey, we're not dead, and I'm sure Sparklebud here is gonna make sure that this isn't gonna be the last time we see each other, Tyler said with a smile, as he pulled up the Pegasus into a hug.
Tyler's right. We'll see each other on the first bird that heads down to your planet. Well, until we meet again then.
Twilight said with a smile, as a Phantom came down to pick them up. Twilight alongside Scootaloo and the Arbiter stepped into the Phantom, and turned around to take a last look at the three humans. Both she and Scootaloo used their wings to perform a salute, the three humans returning the gesture, as the Phantom doors closed and cut off the line of sight between them. Scootaloo let out a yawn, as she was getting close to 2 days without sleep.
I guess I could use the oh crap, we kind of broke off contact with Equestria a month ago, didn't we?
She said as she looked at Twilight.
We'll just have to surprise them, won't we?
Twilight replied with a grin. Scootaloo let out a single laugh.
Yeah, I'm just scared of what they'll think of us,
she admitted.
Scouts, they're our friends and family, they'll love you no matter what.
Twilight comforted the filly.
We should probably get some more sleep now because I'm on the verge of collapsing.
Both ponies chuckled as they landed in the carrier. Follow him. He'll lead you to your quarters, the Arbiter told the two, as he pointed at a blue-armored elite miner. The two nodded and walked to their rooms, while they could feel the carrier ascend into space. Once the two ponies entered the room, Scootaloo collapsed on one of the beds and almost immediately fell asleep.
You can go. We'll call for an escort after we wake,
she told the miner, who brought his fist up to his chest and closed the door. Twilight collapsed on the bed beside the filly and also started to drift to sleep.
I'm almost home. I'm almost home,
she thought, as her eyes closed and she fell into a deep slumber. Luckily, the author had gifted us the epilogue and also a couple of bonus chapters just for that extra little kick. So this journey ain't over just yet. Now let's get on to our comforting donators. Top donators: Peter Coulthard, Jayton Man, Darkside, Gauntlet, and Only One Thing. Zar630, Strix, Rayden, Narwhals, Blackmoonheart, Drake Lovedragon, Pastel Skies, Austin Roland, CrazyKiller557, Stu Hex, Will, Omicron Lyrae, Daspo, Delta Omega, Jack Cadge, RunesLefty9852, Madman Stan, Leslie Perkett, Hunter Norman, Stephen Bingham, LineGod12, Sorcerer Constantine, Hudzaza, and many more fantastic people. Thank you all so much for watching this video and live life to the fullest.